Hey guys, so we're going to do Friday's lesson today. And so as we've been going through this, we've really been talking about, who participates, where the distribution of power is. And today we're going to talk a little bit about capitalism and our economy. And I've got a couple of really good videos that I want to show you. And also this has really been in the news lately because you're starting to see people who are going against capitalism and these Marxists and it's the idea that there's always been what we call class warfare in this country where we pit the upper class and the middle class and the lower class against each other. So what I'd like to do here is come right here and start with number 4. And it says, who provides the goods and services that are bought, sold, and used? Let me fix this video down here. All right, so again, what to produce, how to produce it. You've got a command economy, you've got a market economy, and then a mixed economy. So let's go through these. First of all, capitalism, which is also known as free enterprise, is an economy based on private ownership of production and distribution. Individuals and businesses make economic decisions, and the motive is to make a profit. So this is also known as free enterprise. So this is the idea that when you go to the grocery store, you go to Food City, you go to Walmart, you go to Kroger, wherever, it's a private business that you go to, whether you buy a car, if you go to a convenience store, a sporting goods store, they are owned by private individuals and not by the government. And again, the motive is to make a profit. And that's all based on competition. And I think a lot about cell phones. You think about how important cell phones are in our society today. Before I started teaching, I worked in the cell phone business, and I can remember having the first cell phone that actually could receive caller ID. And the neat thing about it was you could walk around and you could pick your cell phone up. Now, the coverage is pretty spotty, but if you were in town or you were somewhere that had really good reception, you could make a phone call, and everybody just thought that was the neatest thing. And then what happened was you started having other phone companies competing with each other. And then you started having more cell phone companies competing with each other. And now look and see what these phones can do. It is absolutely amazing. You guys know, as far as getting on the internet, taking pictures, and just continue to see. And then the new thing, this 5K coming out. And again, I'm not as much of a tech wizard as you guys are, but I was talking to somebody the other day that worked at the Verizon store, and they said they think when 5K comes around, which will probably be in another year or so, that a lot of people will even drop their Wi-Fi because it will be just as quick using a cell phone service than it is just to use your Wi-Fi at home. That's competition. That's what capitalism is. But the thing about capitalism is sometimes people fail. Sometimes people start a business and they don't do well. Sometimes you see people who get really rich off of it. Sometimes people who don't. And so that's why you see there's sometimes a pushback, is because it's the idea that we do have classes where we have an upper class, middle class, and lower class. Socialism. You're seeing this right now on display. I mean, Bernie Sanders is a socialist. He was running for president for the Democrats. He is speaking this week at the Democrat convention. He is a socialist. And it's the idea of an economy in which the government controls resources and industry. It's the idea that we want everybody to be the same. And so rather than going to a private individual, rather than them owning a business, rather than going to Food City, you would go to a government grocery store. And the motive is not profit, but try to treat everybody the same. The problem is everywhere that socialism has been tried, it doesn't work. And again, I will show you some videos on this. And then of communism, which is like socialism, but it's both an economic and political system in which private property is discouraged. So I think about the old former Soviet Union on this. So again, the main thing is that capitalism is done with private ownership. The motive is profit, to make money, whereas socialism and communism is where the government controls everything and there's not a profit. So the problem with that is, think about like the new iPhones. Like let's say an iPhone 12 comes out. Well, if it's really, really popular in a capitalistic society, Apple's going to continue to make as many Apple iPhone 12s as they can. In a socialistic or a communistic economy, they might say, okay, well, we're going to allow you to get those. We've got 10,000 iPhones, and then when they're gone because there's no incentive to make a profit to make more of those or to make it better. And again, capitalism versus communism, you see free elections. There's more than one political party. Industry and agriculture is owned by individuals. You got different social classes, and you have freedom of speech. In communism, it's a one-party state. You don't have freedom of speech. Industry and agriculture is owned by the state. There are no different social classes, which the thing about communism is it's the perfect economic theory on paper because it treats everybody the same, that there is no upper class, middle class, or lower class. But we've seen that that doesn't work because what happens is, let's say you're somebody who wants to be a brain surgeon and you go to school, you go to college, you go to medical school, and you have $100,000 worth of student debt. But then what happens is you get a job working at a hospital as a brain surgeon, you become a millionaire, you can pay that off. Whereas if it's a socialistic economy, and let's say that we pay everybody $60,000 a year because we want everybody to be the same, well, why would somebody go through all the trouble of going to school for all those years to be a brain surgeon when they can work at a factory and make $60,000 a year and not be in any debt at all and not be on call, 24 hours a day and that type of thing. And there's also strong censorship. And here's a little chart that talks about having cows here. This is in traditional capitalism, you have two cows. You sell one, you buy a bull. Your herd multiplies and the economy grows. You sell them and you retire on the income. In socialism, you have two cows. You end up giving one to your neighbor. And in communism, you have two cows, but the state takes both away and gives you some milk. And again, we're in a mixed economy. Even though we're capitalism, there are certain things that are controlled by the government. So, the healthcare industry is pretty regulated by the government. I think about the postal service. Mail is delivered by the federal government. It's not delivered by UPS or it's not delivered by FedEx. So you do have some instances where the government is actually controlling things, but for the most part, it is private ownership. And so you can see here we are a mixed economy. And I'm going to show you a little video here from Prager University that explains capitalism pretty good. And again, you see here the command, some advantages and disadvantages of a command economy, some advantages and disadvantages of a market economy. And again, you've got freedom of choice, private ownership of property, but there's also going to be an unequal distribution of resources. You're going to have rich people and poor people. And again, that's one of the marks against capitalism. That's why communism was so popular during the Great Depression, because people were losing their jobs and that people were really suffering. And they were saying, hey, does capitalism really work? But again, some of the disadvantages with the command economy is there's really no incentive to work. And I talked a little bit before about, being a brain surgeon versus working in a factory. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with either one of those jobs. But again, it's almost the same thing like we're getting ready to talk about with the minimum wage. Should we raise the minimum wage for somebody who's flipping burgers for the same thing of someone who's doing a more skilled job?
Capitalism versus socialism. We can sum up each economic system in one line. Capitalism is based on human greed. Socialism is based on human need, right? No, wrong, so wrong. It's exactly backwards. And I'll prove it to you. Been on Amazon lately? Each of the thousands of products Amazon offers represents the work of people who believe they have something you want or need. If they're right, they prosper. If they're wrong, they don't. That's how the free market works. It encourages people to improve their lives by satisfying the needs of others. No one starts a business making a thing or providing a service for themselves. They start a business to make things or provide services for others. Now, I speak from personal experience. When I was the CEO of the company that owns Carl's Jr. and Hardee's restaurant chains, we spent millions of dollars every year trying to determine what customers wanted. If our customers didn't like something, we changed it, and fast. Because if we didn't, our competitors would, pun intended, eat us for lunch. The consumer, that's you, has the ultimate power. In effect, you vote with every dollar you spend. In a socialist economy, the government has the ultimate power. It decides what you get from a limited supply it decides should exist. Instead of millions of people making millions of decisions about what they want, a few people, government elites, decide what people should have and how much they should pay for it. Not surprisingly, they always get it wrong. Have you ever noticed that late-stage socialist failures always run out of essential items like toilet paper? Of course, this isn't a problem for those who have the right connections with the right people. Those chosen few get whatever they want. But everyone else is out of luck. Venezuela, once the richest country in South America, is the most recent example of socialism driving a prosperous country into an economic ditch. Now, maybe you think it's an unfair example. I'm not sure why, but okay. We'll ignore the fact that leftist activists celebrated it as a great socialist success right up until it wasn't. But what about Western European countries? Don't they have socialist economies? People seem pretty happy there. Why can't we have what they have? Free healthcare, free college, stronger unions. Good question, and the answer may surprise you. There are no socialist countries in Western Europe. Most are just as capitalist as the United States. The only difference, and it's a big one, is that they offer more government benefits than the US does. We can argue about the cost of these benefits and the point at which they reduce individual initiative, thus doing more harm than good. Scandinavians have been debating those questions for years. But only a free market capitalist economy can produce the wealth necessary to sustain all of the supposedly free stuff Europeans enjoy. To get the free stuff, after all, you have to create enough wealth to generate enough tax revenue to pay for everything the government gives away. Without capitalism, you're Venezuela. In a 2015 speech at Harvard, Denmark's prime minister took great pains to make this point. I know that some people in the US associate the Nordic model with socialism. Therefore, I would like to make one thing clear. Denmark is far from a socialist planned economy. Denmark is a market economy. So when you point to Denmark as a paragon of socialism, you're really singing the praises of capitalism. The more capitalism, the less socialism you need. Look at America since 2017. A policy of lower taxes and less government regulation, that's more capitalism, has led to a robust economic expansion, something thought impossible just a few years earlier. Unemployment, notably among minority groups typically most at risk for poverty, is at a generational low. Economic expansion gets people off welfare and into work. That's less socialism. None of this requires a degree in economics. Common sense is all you need. That's why it's so frustrating to see young people praising socialism and criticizing capitalism. It's bad enough that they're working against their own interests, better job prospects, better wages, personal freedom. But they're also working against the interest of the less fortunate. Capitalism leads to economic democracy. Socialism leads to the economic dictatorship of the elite. Always and everywhere. So beware what you ask for. You just might get it. I'm Andy Puzder, the author of The Capitalist Comeback for Prager University.